Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Who was it who said, hang on, I think it was Julie. I wish I was still in Spain. Good Lord, I haven't been in Spain in decades, and I wish I was still in Spain. I could go for a delicious paella right about now. And if you're on the Balearic Islands like Majorca, and you start your day with an ensaimada, those beautiful pastries, amazing. Absolutely delicious. So yeah, I wish I was in Spain at this very moment, eating fresh seafood and speaking Spanish and all of that. So the other day I caved. I don't know how you guys are with Facebook, but I tend to get the same ads over and over and over again. And I finally decided to pull the trigger on a subscription service called Wildgrain because they kept on taunting me with video footage of sourdough bread being buttered lavishly with the butter that this company sells. And I said, that's it. Because, you know, in order to get bread like that, like really, really good, crusty, well-made bread, I would have to drive to Indianapolis, and I'm really not in the fucking mood. There really aren't that many good bakeries around here, and if you want a decent bread, forget it. Oh, you went to Majorca, Julie? That's great. Or Mojacar, not Majorca. Okay, got it. Hello, everybody. Good to see you. So I said, that's it. I could use a good sourdough, and they sell croissants and other things. So I decided that I was going to give the box a try. It arrived today. I popped the croissants in the oven, and they are very, very tasty indeed. The butter came frozen solid, so I've got it out on the countertop for it to thaw. And later on today, I'm going to pop the sourdough in the oven. And I was worried that I was going to be late because I totally forgot that I was supposed to make dinner. So anyway, I shoved everything in the crock pot, and now it's cooking away, and it'll be done just in time. So anyway, I will let you know what I think of wild grain. It is quite expensive, and I'm not planning on getting it every month because who the hell can eat that much bread? But the bread looks really, really good. It looks good. And I was very curious about the butter. So I'll let you know if it's wildly not only overpriced, but whether it's the claims that are made by the company are overstated or if they're in line with what it is that they offer. Okay. Oh, that's fine, Astro. It's fine. Just listen away. That works for me. Okay, guys, so I've got a couple of topics today. I was only going to cover this hate crime topic, but then I ran into another video, and it's about the LA riots, and I thought we might cover that too, because this morning, yet again, we were watching a news clip on YouTube from CNN, and yet again, we had public officials out there insisting that that these are peaceful demonstrations, don't call them a riot. And yet again, we saw that hilarious technique. And I told Negz, you know, these are the times that I wish that I worked in TV and that I was still sitting in the control room. And I just said, roll tape, roll tape, roll tape, because it's one of those things of who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes, you know? So we had various public officials. We had Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi and other California dignitaries, elected representatives, come forward to insist that these are not riots. These are just protests, and that Trump is making everything worse. While in the split screen, they were rolling footage of the looting, the cars burning, people throwing, you know, rocks and cinder blocks at cars and dropping heavy objects from bridges, But it was the looting that did it for me. It was the looting for me. And then, you guys, this was amazing. So we switched over to another video that was showing Fox and Friends, and not from today, but I think from yesterday. And they rolled a clip from MSNBC, and I swear, I wish that I could dig it up. It was amazing. And I said to Negz, this cameraman is so shady, and I love it. And imagine that MSNBC has a shady cameraman. So he was filming an interview with Gavin Newsom. And so you've got the reporter and Newsom, and they're both in focus. And then he zoomed in on Newsom, and then Newsom went out of focus. And as Newsom is talking about what's actually happening on the ground and how, you know, everything is being exaggerated and so on, the cameraman focused on the television that was on behind Gavin Newsom, where you could clearly see the looting, the burning, the mayhem, the chaos. And I said, my God, I love it. This cameraman needs to get a raise. That's how you do it. That is how you are a professional cameraman working in television news. And I remember, you know, watching it and thinking, my God, does that cameraman know that Gavin Newsom is out of focus? Well, yes, because he did it on purpose. And I was dying. I was dying laughing. So we're going to be talking about LA soon. But we're going to start with this hate crime story. Now, I found this really good Buck Angel video. So Buck Angel is a few years older than I am. Crochetter is in chat. Crochetter is a few years younger than I am. But for all intents and purposes, whether you're a young boomer or an older millennial or an older Gen Xer, and you had any involvement at all in the gay community, whether you were gay yourself or bisexual, or you were an ally, you just had a lot of gay friends, you were all too familiar with hate crimes and what a hate crime against gay people actually entails. And not just the actual act of stomping or beating up or, you know, nearly killing somebody, but also the terrible abuse that gay people would then face at the hands of the police. Some police, like the police in DC, were running blackmail operations that they called fairy shaking. And there were cases in DC where somebody would get beaten half to death on the street, and an ambulance would not load them into the vehicle and transport them to the ER because everybody was so afraid of HIV/AIDS. Hello, Nietzsche. Hello, Mama. How you doing? Now, so all of us are fully aware of the seriousness of hate crimes. It's one of the reasons why I absolutely refuse to use the word queer, and why I hate the fact that it's now a term in common parlance. I absolutely despise it because it's a word that I associate with violence, always. Every time I hear the word queer, I think of my friends getting beaten up, getting mugged, getting assaulted, and it's a very unpleasant memory. But if there's one thing that I hate even more than a hate crime, it's a hate crime hoax. Because what that does, like false rape allegations, like any false allegation being pinned on someone, it creates an enormous amount of distress. It diverts resources with law enforcement away from actual problems, and it downplays and downgrades actual serious crimes and makes it that much more difficult to prosecute the real cases of crime, especially in the cases of rape, but even with hate crimes. And we have seen so many examples over the past few years of people crying wolf, whether it's Jussie Smollett, whether it was the woman in Pennsylvania who planted a noose on her own desk at the office and claimed that she came in and it was just sitting there, and then it was determined that she had put it there herself. And so People will try to get away with faking a hate crime if they feel that they can make money, get attention, whatever, any kind of compensation, any reward, even if it's only attention. It seems to be enough these days. Well, we had a recent example. And I'm just going to bring Buck's video up because he did such a good job explaining it. And it is called, "This is Not a Gay Hate Crime." Now, some of you may have heard of this case. It involves a voice actor from King of the Hill, and he also appeared on Parks and Recreation, which is a great show. So some of you might remember him from there. This individual, this actor, was recently killed by a neighbor, which is tragic in and of itself. It's enough of a tragedy. You don't need to add sauce to it to make it any more tragic, appealing, worthy of empathy or concern. But that's exactly what happened in this case. And now the allegation that it was a hate crime, that it was an anti-gay hate crime, has fallen apart. So let's take a look at this, and let's go.
Not a gay male couple, okay? Period. So
reports that detail what officers were investigating before the actor was shot and killed in his Southside neighborhood. Joss was best known as the voice of John Redcorn in the long-running Fox animated series King of the Hill.
He also made appearances as Ken Hotate on the NBC show Parks and Rec. Those two popular
Such a
roles
handsome man.
defining his professional life in Hollywood.
And we've been working to find out more about his life here in San Antonio along Dorsey Street on the South Side. News 4 got a hold of several police reports today, painting a picture of some very erratic and dangerous behavior.
The News 4 I-Team's Jordan Elder is live at the site of the shooting to start our team coverage. Jordan, tell us what those reports are saying.
Well, Mandy and Jonathan, these reports show police were heavily involved in this neighborhood and with Jonathan Joss. Some of these reports show neighbors saying that they saw him with a crossbow on multiple occasions, and that includes Sigfredo Ceja Alvarez, who is now accused of killing Jonathan Joss.
hey everyone, welcome back to the channel.
Hello,
Today
Buck.
I really want to talk about this Jonathan Joss thing. First off, I want to say it's horrible.
I love Buck Angel. Please subscribe to his channel and please watch his superb content. He did a really good job with this video. Maybe I should shut up and just play it.
Not okay. This person got killed.
Hi, Judy.
Not cool with any of that. Obviously, that
Okay, I'm going to interrupt Buck yet again. Hey, Judy, I'm sure that you have noticed that the Free Palestine mob has now merged with these assholes in Los Angeles. I saw a number of Palestine flags flying at the riots. Judy, back me up on this if you don't mind. Hello, beautiful regret. Did we not warn people, and by we, I don't just mean you and me, but I mean others, other members of the tribe, did we not warn the public? Did we not warn the public that what starts with Jews never ends with Jews? It starts with us. We are the canaries in the coal mine. And it always spreads to others. And that's exactly what we've seen happen. So, if only you had listened. Yes, thank you, Judy. Yeah, we did, didn't we? Numerous times. If only people had listened to us for a year and a half and put the kibosh on these fucking demonstrations, if you can even call them that. If only a stop had been put to these demonstrations, especially after people started getting killed. Maybe, and there had been consequences for the people who engaged in violence, maybe we could have stopped this virus from spreading. But okay, LA, it's your problem now. Oh, and it's not just LA, right? It's also Chicago, San Francisco. I hear that there were riots, or, there was unpleasantness in Atlanta, and it's going to get worse because These big cities did not take firm action. Because who gives a shit about Jews, right? Here we are with our white privilege. So we had it coming. Well, now all of you have it coming too. All of you have it coming. All of you business owners in LA who are now getting your shops torched and burned and looted. Maybe if all of you had spoken up, maybe if more communities, instead of being selfish and trying to accuse Jews of having, as I said, white privilege and being at the top of the pecking order and being responsible for all the ills in this country, and engaging in your little intersectional wordplay, maybe if you had pulled the plug and locked a lot of these people up, maybe we wouldn't be having these problems in LA, maybe, or they wouldn't have been as bad. But now we see that there is definitely a crossover between the pro-Palestine people, these protesters in Los Angeles, and that there is a large number of professional agitators in this crowd, Antifa and so on. And it cracks me up that that the local officials are so upset about ICE agents covering their faces, but they haven't said a peep about these violent criminals in the street breaking the law openly on video, and how they have their faces covered. Nobody has said a word about that. I noticed that. All right, let's continue with Buck.
That's the most tragic part of this whole story, is that somebody's life is gone because of this. But that being said, I'm also about the truth. It's why I waited to do this video, because I just felt like everybody jumped on it so quick, and of course they are, because it's news and it's a little bit controversial on some level. But I really wanted to see if I could get enough actual real information, and every day new stuff keeps coming out about this. But the reason, I think the number one reason why I really wanted to do this today was because it is being called a homophobic hate crime.
Correct.
And also that the Jonathan Joss is... he is a victim of death. There's no doubt about it, but there's more to a story.
Yep.
And you can't just say one thing without looking at all sides of the story. So I decided I wanted to look at all sides of the story and why something so tragic and disgusting could happen, and is only one person at fault of this, and so on and so forth. But one of the things that are more important to me is the fact that it's being called a homophobic hate crime.
Exactly.
When it is not a homophobic hate crime,
No, it
in
is
my
not.
opinion.
No, it is not,
So
in my
just so you
opinion.
know, the husband of the Jonathan Joss, who is a biological male, the husband is a transgender female who lives as a male, so, and identifies as a gay man.
Okay, so I know that this is complicated. This is difficult to follow. I'm going to break it down for you. Jonathan Joss, a man who never quibbled with his manhood, is married to a woman, a biological woman who claims to be a gay man. That's how she identifies. In other words, to make it even simpler, they were a heterosexual couple. A man married a woman. The woman then chose to identify as a gay man. And so that is what presumably made it a homophobic hate crime. Jonathan Joss never identified as gay. Jonathan Joss never claimed to have an interest in men because he was straight. And so is the woman, by the way. She can say that she's a gay man as much as she wants. She's not. It's like when straight guys claim to be lesbians. They're not. They're straight men. Okay? So, a heterosexual couple was victimized because one of them was shot dead by a neighbor. So, there goes the homophobic hate crime talking point straight out the window. Let's go.
So first off, that's not a homophobic. Nope, it is not. Okay, you're going to get mad at me, trans community. Let's just state the facts here. And this is why facts are important. And I also want you to know that the gay male community is getting very upset about this.
Good.
Because it is not a gay hate crime.
Nope.
Possibly it could be a transgender hate crime. Possibly it could be a crime for many other situations.
No, if it was a transgender hate crime, the neighbor would have shot the wife, who claims to be the husband. But no, it's not a transgender hate crime either. The wife is still alive. It's Jonathan Joss who's dead. And so Buck is going to go into the backstory. Let's continue.
But to call this a homophobic hate crime is actually misrepresenting what a gay, and then of course all the queer newspapers and everything, and newspapers, queer papers and online are all like, it's a homophobic hate crime. No, just stop already. So at least report it. Very little of the reporting also is stating that this person, the husband, Tristan, okay, is a transgender, female to male. That is just misrepresenting the whole story. So I'm going to continue with this because this is actually a pretty thorough investigation here by this news station. And it looks to me like there was a lot going on there, okay? A lot going on there. So let me, well, actually, should I read? Well, let me do a little bit of this first.
Jonathan, these reports show police were heavily involved in this neighborhood and with Jonathan Joss. Some of these reports show neighbors saying that they saw him with a crossbow on multiple occasions, and that includes Sigfredo Ceja Alvarez, who is now accused of killing Jonathan Joss.
Disturbances, welfare checks, and mental health calls. Police visited actor Jonathan Joss's home more than 60 times since the beginning of 2024. Neighbors were very familiar with what they call a long-standing feud between Joss and Sigfredo Ceja Alvarez, the man now charged in his murder.
You know, they would back and forth, say things to each other.
Joss and his husband, Tristan Kern de Gonzalez, have said threats were repeatedly made toward them because of their sexual orientation.
You see, they keep doing it. His husband, a sexual. So anybody who doesn't know anything about the LGBTQIA people community is just going to make some assumption that that's an actual female who identifies as a male, who now identifies as gay. So let's just, this is why it's just upsetting to me that we're not reporting these things properly. Okay.
And well, I completely blame the gay press for this. Primarily because they just let it rip that this is exactly what was happening. It's obvious based on the number of calls to the house and based on the problems that this guy had with the neighbor going back a very long time, apparently, that he was suffering from some pretty serious mental health issues. And that is terribly, terribly sad. And that is why the point is that the circumstances surrounding this murder are tragic enough. You don't have to add to it. You don't have to. Unless, of course, you really, really want attention and sympathy, and perhaps to start a Give, Send, Go or a GoFundMe or something like that. It looks like Jonathan Joss and his wife were living in pretty shitty conditions. It looks like Jonathan Joss's mental health had deteriorated to the point that he was a loose cannon in the neighborhood and that he was very, very well known to the police. So, again, like I said, it's tragic enough. You do not have to add to it to make it worse.
Okay, Jonathan can identify as gay all he wants, or so can Tristan, but that's not the actual factual information here.
But neighbors tell us threats were being made both ways.
There you go.
Alvarez reporting Joss would threaten him too.
You know, he would say that.
There you go. So see why I waited? Because you're going to hear both sides of the story now.
Correct.
Again, I'm going to keep reporting. It's not okay that he got killed, but there's two sides to this story. And there was a lot of feuding going on in this neighborhood, and there was a lot of insanity going on. And did you see how many of those disturbance calls there were to Jonathan's house?
Yes.
You know, he had been threatened by him, and that You know, he would show him a gun every once in a while. He would throw things over his fence.
Joss was reportedly at the site of his former home to pick up mail. The house burned down in January, which we also see in the calls for service.
Okay.
In a post, Kern de Gonzalez implied that this was related to sexual orientation. Quote, that home was burned down after over 2 years of threats from people in the area who repeatedly told us they would set it on fire. But when Joss spoke to reporters back in January, he said the city shut off power to his house.
It's been so cold lately that my partner and I have been doing a fire inside to stay warm.
The San Antonio Fire Department did open an investigation, but we're told today that the case has since been closed.
Okay, so yet again, there's another point. They were lighting fires inside of this shitty house, and the guy burned his own house down. I wonder how many of the people who jumped the gun on the gay hate crime story did any investigation into this. I mean, there he is on camera, admitting that he was lighting fires inside that house. The power had been shut off. And this is another thing that I think adds to the tragedy of all this. It's obvious that despite the work that he did on King of the Hill, despite the work that he did on Parks and Rec, they were living in abject poverty. You know, they were not doing well. And that's why they were living in this shitty neighborhood. That's why, I'm guessing that's why the power was shut off. The city doesn't just arbitrarily shut power off on a house. There's got to be some other reason. And I think that later on in the video, Buck is going to explain what that other reason could have been. And so they were cold, and they were forced to light a fire inside the house. I cannot stand it when inaccurate reporting goes viral and the direction of the story changes, when people lie about somebody and that goes viral. And then it jumps from one person to another, or when you have a concerted effort to paint a story as something that it is not. I'm sorry, this goes against everything that I was taught as a baby journalist. Everything that I was taught by my elders, people with decades and decades of experience, people with actual discipline when it came to knowing when to sit on a story and when to break it. But then again, that was long before social media. So now, you know, a lie travels all the way around the world 20 times while the truth is still putting its pants on. And the bottom line is that these stories hurt the gay community. They hurt the credibility of the gay community. And they hurt actual victims. This is why this pisses me off. This is why when women come forward and make false accusations about rape, about assault, about any crime, what they do is they make it even more difficult for legitimate victims to have their day in court and to be taken seriously. I cannot, I know I'm going to keep on repeating myself like a stupid parrot, but this really makes me fucking angry. How many of my gay friends in the 1980s craved justice? Craved it. But if you get rolled by a bunch of Marines in Georgetown or in DuPont Circle, do you really think that at that time the local authorities, that the police were going to do anything to get Marines locked up for beating up a couple of, you know, FGOTs or a drag queen, you know, or robbing somebody and leaving them half dead? There was no justice back then. There was no fucking justice. And I think that that's why when I see stories like this, and I think what an absolute disgrace, what a waste, And it's another way to undermine trust in the gay community, and that makes me see fucking red. Let's continue.
We've requested the documents from that investigation, and we've asked the fire department if they can say for sure whether that fire was arson or if it was accidental. Well,
hold on. I want to show you something right now because I found a video of Jonathan totally admitting that they actually burned their own house down by accident.
There you go.
So here we, again, so watch this.
I had 4 neighbors basically say that my house is not worth living in. The house is in my name. Since then, they have changed. No electricity, no gas. They took everything out. It's been so cold lately that my partner and I have been doing a fire inside to stay warm. Because for whatever reason, the city of San Antonio wants to tear my house down. 4 neighbors. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but your neighbors can say that your house is not worth living in. While I was out of town, it was vandalized. They took wires out. They knocked my pole down. So the city, no electricity, no gas. So in order to stay warm, we did the best we can. I was just told that one of my dogs died.
In the fire.
Please, people of San Antonio, you guys need to know that we in Texas and San Antonio lead the number of homes to be demolished. If you have a neighbor that says your home's not worth living in, this neighbor over here has pulled a gun on me 3 different times. An AK-47 he pulled on me, and the court did nothing. The police did nothing. These kind of things happen when people have to do things to stay warm. It was my mistake. We checked over the fire.
There you go.
We thought there was no fire burning, but evidently it was one that burned. My name's Jonathan. My name is Jonathan.
He literally just admitted to burning his whole house down.
And it sounds like prior to this, the reason that the utilities were cut off is because the house had been condemned by the city. No city is just going to arbitrarily turn your utilities off for no reason. So it sounds like they got multiple complaints. I'm not sure why. I don't know what was going on. Maybe there was some kind of a hazard. Maybe the house posed a threat to the other houses in the neighborhood. Maybe it was a fire trap. Maybe, who knows? I don't know. But something happened to lead the city of San Antonio to cutting off the utilities. He lit a fire inside the house. He burned his house down, and as a result, one of his dogs died. And you know, I'm going to be very superficial for a second, okay? I'm going to say something that is totally irrelevant, but I cannot help but think it as I sit here and I look at him and I remember him on Parks and Rec. What a handsome man he was. What a handsome guy. And it looks like he was down on his luck. I'm guessing that he hadn't worked in years. They were living hand to mouth. And, you know, he was suffering from mental health problems. And so he ran around the neighborhood making a nuisance out of himself. Because if you take a look at this neighborhood, you can see he wasn't exactly living in the San Antonio version of Beverly Hills. You know what I mean? I don't know what happened. I don't know if he couldn't work anymore because he was too much of a liability on the set. I don't know. I mean, acting is tough. Just ask Crochetter, you know? It's feast or famine. And most of the time when you're an actor, unless you get very, very lucky or you're a huge star, most of the time you will be unemployed. So there is nothing about this story that is funny or uplifting or anything apart from tragic. It's all fucking tragic. It is heartbreaking. Let's continue.
Okay, this is why I waited to do this story. He admitted it. They made a fire in the house because there was no electricity, because and more of the story goes on. They're going to demo this house because it's not safe and they needed to get rid of it.
Right.
Or whatever else is going on. This story is very deep. There's a lot going on here. But that being said, he just admitted to burning his whole own house down. Now I'm going to go back to this news story.
We hear back. For now, reporting live, I'm Jordan Elder.
In all, police were called to Joss's home more than 60 times in the past year and a half. Here's a quick snapshot at just a few of the calls. On March 23rd of last year, police were called to the home over a dispute over a vehicle. On May 24th, police were called for reports of shots fired. Responding officers said they heard shots when they got there, but nobody was found to have been shot. On July 9th, officers were back at the house, this time investigating reports that someone had a crossbow and was pointing it at people. The crossbow was confiscated by police.
We've also confirmed that the city's Dangerous Assessment Response Team, or DART, was involved in the property where Joss and his husband were living. The DART team first got involved in July of 2024.
Jonathan and his husband were living,
as they do with properties that are considered to be a nuisance or dangerous. The city issued a notice to vacate the house because of its dangerous conditions. That was going to be in August. Then the city decided the home should be demolished. All of that finalized by September. But the house hadn't been torn down when a fire started this January. That took place on January the 23rd. And then the house was demolished 7 days later.
We also found out today the man accused in the crime has posted $200,000 bond and is set to be released, but there will be some terms. He's under full house arrest, subject to drug and alcohol testing. He is prohibited from having any firearms, no guns. He has a court hearing set for August 19th. We've also uncovered new audio from the day of the shooting in which Joss died.
That audio and video coming from a security camera at a home along Dorsey Street where that shooting happened. Take a listen.
No está. Sí, no está. No está la troca.
we can hear it.
Surveillance camera footage captures the shots that killed the King of the Hill star on Sunday. Some in the neighborhood say this was a feud that started with a property dispute between Joss and the brother of the man accused of killing him.
See, it's been an ongoing feud in that neighborhood. But when I'm going to read you the statement from Tristan, the husband, who is a transsexual female to male, okay, I'm going to show you why I'm so upset about this whole story.
Yami Virgin from our sister station, Fox SA, continues our team coverage now from the site of this shooting. Yami.
According to neighbors here on Dorsey Street, many were excited when they found out who Jonathan Joss was. King of the Hill, everybody knew him. So they were excited when he got here, but a few years later, a feud started, and it was not with the neighbor who allegedly shot him.
Oh, a different neighbor.
This has been going on for years. I think it's just two people that I guess couldn't stand living next to each other for whatever reasons.
This neighbor who...
Haven't you ever had a bad neighbor? I have.
Yep.
I have. I think pretty much we all have. So to me, that just happens. People feud in neighborhoods for dumb reasons. So the story gets thicker.
Yeah, I mean, a property dispute could literally mean anything. Literally anything. Anything from, you know, you've got too much trash in your yard to an idiotic property dispute that I found myself getting sucked into. The first house that I purchased. And this taught me a very valuable lesson, which I will pass on to all of you if you have never purchased a property. Make absolutely sure, 100% sure, when you are looking at a property, to ask not only the real estate agent, you can ask the owner, whatever, whether or not there's ever been a disagreement between the owner of the house you're looking at and any of the neighbors involving anything having to do with the property line. This is what happened to me. My home, which was in... It was called, I think that they tarted it up as North Kensington. It was Wheaton, okay? It was Wheaton, Maryland, big MS-13 territory, okay? But they figured, okay, they could get away with charging more for the house if they called it North Kensington instead of Wheaton. And it was within, like, walking distance of the Wheaton city limits. But it was Wheaton, for all intents and purposes, which is a lower end, or was at the time, a lower end neighborhood. Much lower end than Kensington. There was a tree growing on the property that I purchased. And the tree was quite large, and it was growing over the driveway of the neighbor. However, there was an ongoing dispute between the woman that I purchased the house from and the neighbor. And the dispute involved the property line and who was responsible for getting rid of the tree. Whether it would be the owner of the house that I bought or whether it would be the neighbor. And so a surveyor had to be brought out to measure it exactly. But it was a whole thing, right? Now, I lucked out because my neighbors were away a lot. I don't know if they were in the Foreign Service. I don't know if they worked for the CIA, but the point is that they were government employees who were never home. And so that's how I got out of dealing with this bullshit, which I didn't want to deal with. And I resented being dragged into it because I had no idea, because they were never home. And it was only when they were back from wherever the hell they had been dispatched to that they would start, passive aggressively leaving little notes and all of that crap. This had been going on for years between these neighbors and the woman I bought the house from. And I ended up selling the house before it escalated and before it turned into a lawsuit and all that bullshit. That is how petty these property disputes can be. It can be literally over anything, and they can escalate. And clearly, when you add mental illness and you add all these other issues into the pot and stir, you can end up with a terrible, terrible tragedy like what happened here.
Asked not to be identified out of fear for their safety, says the argument over the fence line was between Sigfredo Ceja's relative, who lived between Jonathan Joss and Ceja. But they tell us the feud then grew between Ceja and the King of the Hill star.
They both had their part in it, and it just escalated, and somebody, went and hurt the other, and it shouldn't have happened.
No.
I don't think it should be turned into a hate crime, though, because now it's affecting the entire neighborhood, and we're all being looked at as we were harassing Jonathan and his husband because they were homophobic, and that's not the case at all.
Coming up at 6 o'clock.
It's not the case at all. Of course, we're hearing two sides of the story again, okay? But the neighbors are saying that's not true. We're not homophobic. And it does actually kind of suck when you get called something that you're not. So as the story unfolds and we're getting all sides of the story, the most important thing I'm going to keep going back to is it's not a homophobic hate crime.
You know what? This just reminded me of something. Do you guys remember Riley J. Dennis? That Nudnik, one of the very, very early transgender content creators on YouTube, who came out around the time as Milo Stewart and queer kid stuff and all that. This was years ago. This was like 10 years ago. Well, Riley J. Dennis got engaged to a girl named Fiona, who's Australian, and that's why he's in Australia now. So after they got engaged, Fiona also had her own YouTube channel. And she uploaded one of the most ridiculous videos I have ever seen, which really soured me on all this nonsense, where Fiona was saying, well, I never thought that I would fall in love with a woman, and now I'm coming to terms with the fact that I am a lesbian as a result. No, you're not, Fiona. You are not a lesbian because Riley J. Dennis is not a woman. He never was a woman, and he never will be a woman. So no, you are not a lesbian. And at the time, I wrote it off, and I thought, oh, it's just stupid kids, trying to get attention online. But then who knew that this was going to metastasize and this mind rot was going to sink in and spread, and that more and more people would buy into this. Jonathan Joss and his partner were a heterosexual couple, a straight man married to a straight woman. The straight woman took some testosterone, grew a little beard, a little goatee, identified as a gay man, which is weird because Jonathan Joss was not a gay man. So anyway, I just had to share that Riley J. Dennis story before I forgot it. So let's continue.
Okay, these people were feuding for years and years and years, and it has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with whatever was going on in that house. Also, now I really want to read this statement from Tristan here. Hold on one second. So here's the statement that was released by Tristan, the husband, who's a transsexual, who's a female, okay, identifies as a male, says, statement from Tristan Gonzalez, husband of Jonathan Joss. Okay, this is immediately after the immediately after the accident happened, okay, or the shooting, whatever you want to call it, okay. So my husband, Jonathan Joss, and I were involved in a shooting while checking the mail at the site of our former home. The home was burned down after over 2 years of threats from people in the area who repeatedly told us they would set it on fire. We reported these threats to law enforcement, but that's not what happened.
No, it isn't.
Jonathan admitted to lighting his whole house on fire. This is why I don't trust that this person is being honest, because they're already caught in a lie. Okay, they're caught in a lie that they're a gay man. They're not a gay man, and they're caught in a lie that the neighbors burned their house down, when that's also not true.
Correct.
According to Jonathan, who actually said they left the fire on. Okay, so throughout the time, we were harassed greatly by individuals who made it clear they did not accept our relationship. Much of the harassment was openly homophobic. Okay, so that's coming from your side of the story. The neighbors are saying that's not true. Okay. When we returned to the site to check our mail, we discovered the skull of one of our dogs and its harness is placed in clear view. If you also go back to the interview with Jonathan, he stated that their dog was burned in the fire that they accidentally set by trying to keep warm in the house. Okay. I'd like to know more about that. Actually, I'd like to see proof of that. This caused both of us severe emotional distress. We began yelling and crying in response to the pain of what we saw. While we were doing this, a man approached us. He started yelling violent homophobic slurs at us, and then he raised a gun in his lap and fired. Okay. That's coming from Tristan. That was the first sort of post that was made by Tristan there. Now, the next thing I want to bring up that I found that I think is very important is this.
Well,
this is Tristan, the husband, who is a transgender female to male, okay? Tristan's interview after all this happened. Now, this is also very interesting to me.
Right now, with you speaking out, what do you want our viewers to know?
Well, first off, I do want to just say thank you to everyone in the community who has shown so much support and so much love for both Jonathan and myself. I've been getting some really nice messages from people all over the world, and it's really an honor to see how my husband touched so many people's lives, and
my husband,
it's something that I will always be proud of, and I'm always going to try to honor. I also want people to understand that this was a hate crime.
Okay.
Jonathan was killed not only for being in the LGBT community, but also for being an Indigenous man. And Indigenous people are murdered.
Wait a minute.
Come on.
Wait, now it's getting, this is why people just don't care about stuff anymore. Because when you just start making it more than what it really is, how do you know he was killed because he was an Indigenous? Most of the people in that neighborhood, okay, are, it seems to me, Latino who are coming from native space. What? How is it now a Native American Indigenous killing? You see what's happening here? This person who is also, first off, lying about who they are, okay? Secondly, now making it into a whole other, that it's Indigenous. Oh my God. I'm appalled and disgusted by this.
And go missing at a really high rate.
Yes, this is true. A lot of stuff happens in the Indigenous world. There's some great documentaries about that, especially Indigenous women. You should really look at that stuff 100%. But stay on topic here. Right. Now you're going way off
in this country, but they aren't given enough, not nearly enough media attention.
This woman is playing every card from the bottom of the deck, saying that it is a homophobic hate crime. Now it's an Indigenous hate crime. No, it sounds like Jonathan Joss had a series of really bad mental problems, and I'm guessing that this woman was not helping. I don't know what kind of resources there are in San Antonio. But, I mean, I'm sorry. If it had been me, I would have moved. Why do you want to live in a neighborhood where you are surrounded by people who don't like you, where you are constantly squabbling with neighbors left, right, and center? Because remember that the neighbor that he had the property dispute with is not the neighbor that killed him. That was a totally different neighbor. So it's just a terrible story. It's terrible, which is why there's no need to embroider it.
So I do want to continue to speak out on that because that's one of the causes that Jonathan was really passionate about.
But but that's okay. You can be passionate about that, but that's not why you was killed.
No.
First off, you're saying it's a homophobic gay attack because you are gay men lovers, which isn't true.
No.
So people are not going to believe you now. You see what's happening here? And now, secondly, now you're talking about he also got killed because he's an indigenous. Wow. Just wow.
Yes, indeed. And, with police right now, obviously they've come out and said, because of so many people wondering, what happened, they've already said they found no evidence of this being a hate crime. What is your response to that?
Right.
Well, first of all, I believe that it's a really common practice for police to investigate themselves and then find out that they did nothing wrong.
Oh, come on.
I think that's a pretty common police tactic.
Yeah, I remember back in the day things like that, but I think things have changed, in my opinion,
They
Tristan.
have.
Things have changed a lot when it
they
comes
have.
to gay rights. Thank you to all the gay elders in the community who fought for our rights and gave us rights. So, police for sure. There can be some corruption on
Sure.
every levels of every community, just so you know. And I'm holding that community called the transgender gay community. I'm holding all you responsible for not correcting the media when it comes to this idea that this is a gay hate crime.
Agreed.
As far as for the SAPD themselves, they're just trying to cover themselves because for, almost 2 years, longer than that, Jonathan and I tried to go through the proper channels, make the reports, and nothing was done or taken seriously.
I just watched a whole news report that there was like 60 events happening at your house, not at the other neighbor's house, but at your house.
That's
okay?
right.
So,
they never cared about my husband while he was alive.
What?
So I really don't expect them to do much now. But first and foremost, I think that they are just trying to cover up the fact that they did nothing after repeated pleas for help.
But that's not true. There is not one police report that says there was homophobic attacks on you guys. I actually looked. I didn't see anything that said this was homophobic. All of the complaints were neighbors, you two fighting with your neighbors. It was never about being gay or being trans none of the reports said that. How come all of a sudden you're saying all the report? This is why I won't tolerate that. It is not okay, homophobia, transphobia, all of it. It's not okay. But I'm not going to be a part of something because when you lie about stuff like this, people will eventually not care.
Exactly.
Okay, they won't care about gay people's attacks. They won't care about real transphobia.
That's
because
right.
when you just keep saying lies over and over and over, people are going to call you on your stuff and be like, oh, so when it really happens, are they actually going to believe you? So gay men are getting pissed off about this too. I want to show you this. This was on X, and I saw a lot of gay men saying stuff like this, which I found to be Of course they are. Of course they are. It says Jonathan Joss was not a gay man. He did not identify as gay and never dated males. Though actually, I did see a video of him at the in the Austin, Texas, at some event where he actually verbally said, "I'm a gay man." I did see that. His spouse was born female, transitioned after they had married, and is now trying to affirm her identity using his death. This is not a homophobia. She is not a gay man, and
well, he probably said that he was a gay man in the way that Riley J. Dennis's fiancée said that she was a lesbian. He figured, okay, since we've gone through this transubstantiation, literally, where my wife is now claiming to be a man and a gay man, I guess that makes me a gay man. No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. You're a straight couple, or you were a straight couple. I hate everything about this story.
Neither was Josh. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Like, gay men are getting pissed now because they're also being misrepresented. It's like when you say men can get pregnant. It's a misrepresentation.
Yep.
Why are you, Tristan, not just saying you're transgender? Okay? Why are you not just being openly? Now, how do I know Tristan is transgender? Well, because I found it written in the paper called The Independent. And right here, hold on, let me bring it up for you. It says right here, Kern de Gonzalez, who described himself as a transgender man, pushed back forcefully against the SAPD's assertion that their background didn't play a part in the killing. Okay? So right there in black and white, it says that they identify as a transgender man. So that means they're female. Okay? Just so you all know. So I think there was one last thing I wanted to show you here that I think is very important. Again, I'm going to keep going back to this, okay, because it's a very important part of this story. Fire crews reportedly responded to the home in the 200 block of Dorsey Drive around 1 p.m. Thursday. By the time Josh and his partner returned just before 2 p.m., the uninsured resident, okay, was a smoldering loss. Residents was a smoldering loss. I told them it was my fault, Josh said. Very easily it could have been started because of my stupidity.
Okay, so in other words, they lit a fire inside this condemned house that they were supposed to have left because presumably the living conditions were unsafe. They started the fire, they left their pets in the house, and they effed off, and then when they got back, the house had burned down. Oh my God. Oh God. What can one say?
So I'm going to just keep going back to the fact that this partner of his, okay, who claims to be a gay man, is not a gay man, okay? They identify as a gay man, and as we know, you can pretty much identify this is not a gay hate crime. Okay, we don't even know exactly what happened between those two until we get all the understanding of it. But as far as I, first off, am concerned, I never saw any reports of any of that happening. Okay, we don't know what was actually said because you have to, it's Tristan's word against against the other person who shot him. Okay,
right.
Until we see that, we need to know. So thirdly, and most importantly, they are not a gay male couple.
No, they're not.
Okay, period. So that does not make it a gay hate crime. That person is a female who identifies as a male who is a transgender. If anything, it could be a transgender hate crime, but we still don't know what all of that happened. This is what I'm going to leave you with. You got to be careful because one media side, and as far as I'm concerned, it's more of the leftist side, is really painting a picture of homophobia without in any way stating the factual information here. And for somebody who belongs to a community for many years, this is the kind of stuff that hurts us. When you lie and deceive to the public, they will no longer support you, i.e. pride. I mean, come on, man. It's horrifying that this man is no longer with us. That should never happen. That is
Agreed.
not okay. I
Yep.
am not cool with any of that. But what I'm also not cool with is lies and deceit around what the actual truth is. The truth is going to come out. You watch. It's all going to come out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I really want to see how the left media actually comes and apologizes for reporting this as a gay hate
They won't.
crime
They
when
won't.
other things were happening in this. And Tristan is not a gay man. Tristan.
The gay press will probably never apologize for circulating half-truths and lies. I don't know what the hell has happened to the gay press. I don't know what happened to Pink News. I don't know what happened to The Advocate. I don't know what happened to The Blade in DC. I don't understand. These were such critically important publications, so absolutely necessary. And part of the problem was that they threw their lot in with the transgender community after gay marriage became legal across the United States. And so there was a feeling among many of the advocacy groups, well, our work here is done. We achieved what we ultimately wanted to achieve, what we've been fighting for years. Now what do we do? You know, we can't just close shop. Obviously, we've got an organization here, and we are still fundraising, and we've got staff, and we've got all these other issues. So how are we going to justify our existence? Well, what they could have done, this is what I would have suggested, and what a number of older gay people suggested, maybe it would be a good idea for you to turn your eyes outwards and not just focus on the United States or even the West. Why don't you take a look at the way that gay people are treated in Muslim countries or in, what's another example? Uganda, across the continent of Africa, where some very, very restrictive anti-gay laws were passed. Russia is another good example. Why don't we speak out on that? Why don't we use our considerable influence, our donor base, and our Rolodex full of celebrities and other allies to really kick up a fuss about the way that our gay brothers and sisters are treated so horribly? Why don't we make... Well, you know, HIV/AIDS is a bad example because as of a couple of World AIDS Days ago, a couple of years ago, the largest number of people who were coming down with HIV/AIDS were women, heterosexual women. So there are plenty of gay causes that they could have taken up, and it would have been heroic. Absolutely heroic and very, very necessary. But they didn't do that. Yeah, that is the impression that I get. I agree with you, Abigail. That's how it looks to me.
Is a transsexual female, and I'm going to keep saying it, just like me, okay? Just like me. And that I am not a man, okay? I am not a man. I present as a man. I want to be a man, but the reality of the situation is when you take my clothes off and some stuff happens, that's a female right there. So deal with it, people, because you're digging a deep hole that you will never be able to crawl out of. So with that, thank you, everybody. Let's send love to the family of Jonathan Joss, and hopefully, things like this just stop happening. It's horrible
when people
get into these kinds of situations.
Absolutely
and
horrible.
Disturbances in neighborhoods, and they get all crazy with each other and, all that. So, okay, with that, have a great rest of your day, and thanks so much for watching and subscribing and really helping this channel grow. I appreciate you all very much. And I'm going to put a post and see what different kind of videos you might want to see from me, okay? So,
I love Buck Angel so much. Buck Angel is so sane. Buck Angel is so self-aware. And Buck Angel has helped so many people. Buck Angel did a PSA a number of years ago where he talked about the importance of good vaginal and gynecological help. because, Buck Angel has not had bottom surgery, just like Blair White. Buck Angel refuses to get it because he knows damn well that when it comes to cobbling together a phallus out of the skin that they remove from your arm or your thigh or whatever, it doesn't work. And there are a lot of complications with that surgery. And he said, fuck it, I'll just hang on to what I've got. And that's it. And it was a very, 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 very important message for him to send out, because I don't know how many of you guys have seen that excellent documentary, Southern Comfort. But it's a documentary about a female to male individual who never got the full hysterectomy and ended up, I'm not going to spoil it, ended up dying of a gynecological illness that could have been avoided. Now, in his case, this documentary was made years ago, and he was having a lot of trouble finding a gynecologist that would see him in that tiny rural community that he lived in. And it is a terribly, terribly tragic story. But the thing that I love about Buck, and what I love about that documentary also, is that if you are going to transition, you always have to keep in mind that you can identify as whatever you want, but it doesn't erase your biology. So if you are male to female, you are still going to have to get your prostate checked. That is a male organ. Prostate cancer is a male illness. And you cannot just say, oh, well, I've taken estrogen and I've had the surgery and everything, so I should be okay. I don't know if when they do the vaginoplasty, if they remove the prostate as well. I have no idea. I don't know how that works. But if you don't have the bottom surgery, you are still going to have to go in to get an exam. So I also wanted to mention, moving away from that topic, anyway, the point is that Buck's determination to cling to reality is going to end up helping a lot of people if they listen to him. If they listen to him. If you are female to male and you decide not to opt for the bottom surgery and you don't get a hysterectomy, you are still going to have to visit a gynecologist. You have to. So thank you, Buck, for being ahead of the curve on this, and for making a PSA that was not salacious, it wasn't gross or exploitative. It offered up really, really, really good advice. So I don't know how many of you all read my community tab, but it appears that Nate the lawyer has been diagnosed with cancer. Please go wish Nate well. Nate is amazing. I'm going to reach out to him later. I'm going to send him a DM with some tips, since it looks like this is his first go-around. This is his first rodeo. But we love Nate. Nate is a treasure. He is one of the few content creators on YouTube whose content is consistently outstanding. And I know that a cancer diagnosis, when you first get it, is a terrible shock. And so let's show Nate as much love and support as we can. He just made the announcement. It just came out of the clear blue sky. So, Nate, you are one of my content creator heroes. You are amazing. All your content is wonderful. And I know that you're going to get through this. You're going to be fine. But I know that you're frightened because it's a scary diagnosis. So, all right, let's move on to Los Angeles. Let's move on to that, shall we? Now, there's been quite a bit of debate as to whether or not Donald Trump has the authority to send the Marines in. Well, it's a little too late. Or if he has the authority to send the National Guard in. Well, a little too late. There's been a butting of heads between the Trump administration, Gavin Newsom, and Karen Bass. At this point, honestly, I think that it would be daylight madness not to launch a recall campaign of both of them, of both Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom. their mismanagement, not only of the LA wildfires, but also of this most recent outbreak of violence, mayhem, looting, and criminality, has been absolutely unforgivable. Unforgivable. I mean, Jesus Christ, look at what Gray Davis was recalled for. This was years ago. It's like 20 years ago. Take a look at what happened to Governor Gray Davis. That was nothing. That paled in comparison to what has been happening to California under Gavin Newsom's watch. So I decided to do something very, very unusual for this community. Hang on a second. Hang on, I've got to respond to a text message. Oh, Lord, have mercy. Sorry, guys. All right. Okay, so I decided that I was going to do, like I said, do something outside the box, and that is actually look something up. So some of you may recall that after the acquittal of the police officers in the Rodney King case, riots broke out in Los Angeles. This was in 1992. And so I was curious because the riots were very widespread, and it was during that moment, that civil unrest, that we first saw the rooftop Koreans, who were amazing. The Korean business owners went all sniper, brought out their weapons, and went on the roofs of their businesses to protect their property. All right, so I was curious because I did not remember how those riots ended. Okay. Well, listen to this. The riots ended after 6 days of unrest. The situation was resolved. Okay, everybody get your notebooks out. Stop me when this sounds familiar. The situation was resolved by the deployment of the California National Guard, U.S. military, and federal law enforcement agencies, exceeding 10,000 personnel to restore order. By May 3rd, large-scale violence had subsided, and they also imposed a curfew. And by May 3rd, the curfew was lifted. Well, I saw that just today, Karen Bass has declared a curfew. She waited a little too long, but then again, that's the name of the game with that stupid woman. Now, granted, all of those military personnel and the federal law enforcement types were dispatched at the request of the then governor and mayor of Los Angeles. But that's because the then governor and mayor of Los Angeles were responsible human beings who wanted to bring this violence to an end. But isn't that interesting? The National Guard and the military and federal law enforcement. Yes, indeed. So, and I believe that George H.W. Bush invoked the Insurrection Act in 92. So all the shit that Trump is being criticized for, and trust me, I have plenty of criticisms of that man. But this is what happens when you don't study your country's history. You think everything that Trump is doing has never been done before. That's not true. The Insurrection Act was also invoked during the Civil Rights era. So, and I do remember that the National Guard was called when George Wallace stood in the at the doorway of the schoolhouse in Alabama and refused to allow the school to become integrated university. Okay. The point is that that's what it took to calm shit down. You couldn't just rely on the Koreans to do it on their own. So, I'm going to bring up Ty Rivera, who's been doing coverage of this. And, you know, we love Ty Rivera over here. So, here's Ty. And let's hear what Ty Rivera had to say.
Well, cancel Taco Tuesday because the Marines are on standby now.
For every loudmouth leftist telling our troops to remember their oath, stop pretending you know what you're talking about.
Massive looting last night.
Here's what the oath actually says. I do solemnly swear that I support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Look at that.
It goes on to say that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and I will obey the orders of the officers appointed over me according to the regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. That's it. That's the mission. Not to obey the governor, not to side with the mob, and not to do whatever the mayor says.
Yeah, I'm sure that all this shit will accomplish a lot. I'm sure that all of this will result in ICE turning on their heel and leaving, and that it'll free Palestine too. Just you wait. It'll happen any minute now. Any minute now. Palestine will be free. Let's go.
It's about protecting the Constitution and this country, even when weak leadership refuses to do so. So when the President of the United States sends the National Guard to go shut down the chaos in LA, and you start crying about tyranny and martial law, guess what? The military's job isn't to make you comfortable. It's to protect this country when local officials fail. Looting, fires, assault, destruction. That's not protest. That's lawlessness. And if you think defending that makes you some kind of hero, you're the one who forgot what this country stands for, not them. Our troops are not violating the oath. They're upholding it. Because unlike you, they actually took it. Stop using the oath like a political weapon when you have no idea what it means. Our service members are out there doing what needs to be done. You don't have to like it, but you will respect it.
Now, here's the thing. A lot of people have been bringing up the Posse Comitatus Act, which prohibits the U.S. military for being used in law enforcement moves against the American people. Apparently, and this is something I didn't know, because I too was wondering, how is it possible that you can bring troops into an American city to do whatever it is that they're going to do? And apparently, Straubs, my love. Oh, here we go. All right, you guys, you see that? What did I tell you? I don't know if Judy Booty is still here. What did I tell you? There is now a crossover, a joining of hands between the Palestine mobs and these rioters, which is what makes me think that there is a fair number of professional agitators, gang members, and so on, who are involved in both of these movements. I don't know why the Justice Department is dragging their heels about declaring Antifa as a domestic terror group. I think that we are well past the point now of really lowering the boom on Antifa and these other groups. I am still waiting. For a full accounting of where it is that these groups are getting their funding. Especially when you look at what happened on the college campuses, where you had identical tents, one next to the other. You had the signs that were printed up and distributed. And don't give me the shit that it was all George Soros. That's not true. There are foreign governments that are involved in this. The government of Qatar, for example. There are bad actors who are funding these demonstrations. And the flames are being fanned on TikTok and other social media sites. And on top of that, the politicians are lying to us about the seriousness, the nature of the violence and the destruction of these protests. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. Socialism is the answer until you need money to be able to go from city to city, causing mayhem and destruction. Then, it's all capitalism, baby. Right, Straubs? It is so good to see you, by the way. I am so glad to see you here. As always. All right. Anyway, what I was saying about Posse Comitatus is that apparently Posse Comitatus has a ton of loopholes. And politicians have been very good at wiggling their way around these loopholes. But people who are declaring that this is going to be martial law, again, these are the same people who don't know. They've never lived through martial law, number one. They don't know what it is. They don't know what fascism is. They have no idea. And that includes some of my old colleagues in the media who ought to be ashamed of themselves, misusing those words. Hang on, I need a sip of water. And I can promise you, having grown up in a city that was like a magnet for all these weirdos, psychos, like legitimately mentally ill people who would come to DC and just like hang around or try to drive through the gates of the White House because they were insisting that Barack Obama had asked them to come and meet with him, or, taking a firearm and going and shooting up the entrance of the CIA. Washington, there have been studies that have shown that Washington does attract a lot of very, very paranoid people who in some cases turn violent. But also, I have seen this kind of violence and mayhem in the street before. And it is a terrifying feeling to be trapped in your home because you can't go anywhere, because there is looting, there is violence, people are getting attacked, cars are being burned, whatever. And you know that if you get into trouble, that the police won't come because they're completely overwhelmed because of the sheer number of protesters. And I've said this before, it's one of the many reasons that I decided that DC was not for me anymore. I have made it abundantly clear on this channel how much I despise political violence. I'm terrified of it. My family experienced it. My ex-husband's family experienced it. I have heard too many stories about it, and then when you see how things turn when they get out of control, it's terrifying. I mean, for me, BLM and January 6th were the last fucking straw. I said, that's it, I'm out. I cannot live in a city like this anymore. So anyway, let's continue.
I'm watching some people get arrested for the ICE raids in LA. I'm not laughing because they're going to jail. I'm really not. I'm laughing because I did that stupid. What's up, everybody? Ty Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. First off, thank you for alerting me in the comments that people were protesting outside of Camp Pendleton. But before I really get into the Camp Pendleton thing, YouTube isn't loving that I'm talking about this stuff. So if you could do me the favor of liking, commenting, and subscribing, that really would help me on the algorithm.
Yeah, if you could do that for me as well. Hello, Negz, my darling. How are you? Yeah, his piercings are very unfortunate, but he's terrific. We love Ty around here. All right. I am going to share his channel. I mean, I've played Ty's content so many times around here. Thank you, my beloved Negz. Oh, and I came up with a solution for gifting memberships on your channel. I'll talk to you about it when I get home. For those of you who didn't know, Negz now has channel memberships. So please do join. Please do. And if you would like and share and subscribe here, and especially, look, your subscriber count is really a matter of ego. That's all it is. It's just a way to make you feel good. But it does boost content in the algorithm. So, oh, there we go. Members only. There you go. Exclusive club. Okay. But if you're not subscribed, if you wouldn't mind doing so, that would be great. All right, let's continue with Ty.
On our way to 100,000 subscribers, seeing how fast we can get there. Over 84,000 now, which I'm pretty proud of, and I'm pretty thankful to you guys for. When you click the subscribe button, make sure you tap the bell, select all notifications so that you know every time I upload.
Armed with signs and a passion to protect, these demonstrators, including military veterans, mad about Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth's post on X, saying Marines at Camp Pendleton were placed on high alert.
Which, if you're not familiar with Camp Pendleton, that is the Marine base that the 700 Marines that are being sent to LA are stationed. I don't blame them. I feel like they're a little misled though. But it is their right to protest. I didn't really care for when they were bringing up the oath, though, because I think they're being disingenuous or they haven't thought it through.
Right.
Because if you say don't go against American citizens, let's take that apart first.
It is unlawful to deploy American troops on American citizens.
Never mind, the oath does cover foreign and domestic. But let's go ahead and take the American citizen part. A lot of these people aren't American citizens. And the ones that are holding up flags from other countries and illegal aliens, that to me is especially egregious, because what it feels like to me, and you guys can let me know how you feel about it, but what it feels like to me is you are planting your flag in one of the states of the United States, which is California, and you're saying that this is now ours. And if you look at a lot of the signs that they're holding, especially the people that are from Mexico, obviously, a lot of signs they're holding are saying that this is Mexico. California is Mexican land. So are you telling us that you are taking over California? Or you have decided that you are taking California back? Because I made a video on that, and I'll put the link down below in the pinned comment. California wasn't even a part of Mexico for that long.
That's
so
right.
When they say that, it's really not very accurate at all. It makes no sense to me. Also, everything used to be somewhere else. So I don't know why these people feel like that's a good argument, or that means that they just get to stay. Like that's...
Yeah, and by the way, when I was first hired for federal service, I too had to take an oath where I swore to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I also had to take an oath when I graduated from the police academy, and I became a reserve police officer. Same oath. Defend and protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. All you got to do is read the oath, man. That's all. And don't go to TikTok to do research on posse comitatus. Posse comitatus is much more complex than some brain-dead, retarded TikToker who's 21 years old can explain, okay? Talk to somebody who actually knows what the fuck they're talking about. And that person is not me, by the way, okay? But there are people out there who can explain it. And as I said, George H.W. Bush did exactly the same thing in 1992 to bring an end to the LA riots. And it worked. My question would be for Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom. I want to know why they are so resistant to bringing the violence to an end. I don't get it. Do you not give a shit about business owners in your state? Do you not care that their stores are being trashed and looted? Do you not give a fuck that the roads are being blocked? Do you not care that cars are being set on fire? Do you not care that these people are being very menacing? And in those groups of violent rioters, we don't know who is who. We don't know how many people are there because they're illegal. We don't know how many people are there because they're gang members, career criminals. We don't know. We have no way of knowing. And I think it's about fucking time for all these states to make it illegal to walk around with your face covered in public unless there is a national health emergency that justifies covering your face. Nobody should be permitted to walk around with their face covered. Nobody. Forget it.
Not the way it works. So that's very frustrating. But if that's what you're saying and that's what you're doing, the way that I saw a man describe it was perfect to me because he described it as a well-coordinated insurgency.
Yeah.
This isn't a protest problem here in Los Angeles, Sean. This is a counterintelligence problem. And what's happening in Los Angeles isn't free speech. This is coordinated insurgency, which is what everybody understands, and what Nicole just alluded to. And we've got political-backed money, digital organizing on platforms, masked agitators who are flooding the streets right now again with the Palestine flags, every other flag but the American flags, and politicians who are quietly standing behind this all. You just spoke to Newsom. No one's doing a thing. Bass isn't doing a thing. And so this has nothing to do with immigration. This is about control, Sean. Control of the streets.
Yep.
Control of the algorithm, and ultimately control of the country, which is what they're trying to do. And this is low threat domestic intensity is what this is. Insurgency. This is what this looks like. And if this was overseas, and we saw this happening right now with U.S. troops, mobs trying to overrun Marines outside of an embassy, torching vehicles, and trying to breach perimeters, this would be terrorism, Sean.
Exactly.
And the ones who are paying the price, law enforcement on the ground. And so Donald Trump was right to send in the Guard, to activate the Marines, and now it's time to start following the money and prosecuting.
And I thought
yes, and it's about motherfucking time. It is about motherfucking time that we followed the goddamn money. The munty. Yes, indeed. Many people in the Jewish community have been asking the government for a year and a half to trace the source of the money that is funding these campus protests. And I see that there's a lot of chatting and a lot of promises and there are a lot of chests being thrown out and all that. I'll believe it when I see it, all right? I'm not going to be a total negative Nancy, but I am dying to know where the funding is coming from for all of this. We know that Qatar has been pouring money into the universities, into a number of different areas. And we know that Qatar has been up to no good. We know that certain organizations like CARE are shady as fuck. And we know that organizations like the Holy Land Foundation were already nailed ages ago for funneling money to terrorist organizations. So, we need a forensic accounting of who is funding these professional protesters and these professional agitators.
That was a perfect way of describing it, because it really is like you are trying to take over the state of California, which is one of the states of the United States. And so if President Trump does give an inch and let you guys have California? Is that the way that it's supposed to work? Is he's just supposed to give up California because you guys have decided that that's no longer a part of the United States? And when I see Gavin Newsom on TV talking about the fact that Tom Homan can arrest him and come get me, tough guy, and whatever, Gavin Newsom, let me tell you, is just trying to save any type of bid he may have towards president, but he's never going to be president.
No, he's not.
Because he's been terrible for the state of California.
Yeah, he's been terrible for the state of California. And both he and his ex-wife have so many skeletons in their closet that it would be entertaining if he ran. I wouldn't do it if I were him. He has a lovely young family. I don't know why you'd want to put them through this humiliation and embarrassment. But he's been a terrible governor of California. Absolutely terrible. And for all the bitching and moaning that resulted in Governor Gray Davis's recall, Gray Davis was like a paragon of leadership compared to this motherfucker, Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom's tenure has been an absolute disaster.
And I think anybody, even the most liberal, would know this, even if they wouldn't admit it out loud. If they live in California and they've been paying attention, they know that Gavin Newsom has run it into the ground. So the last thing he can do, his last ditch effort, might be trying to get arrested and coming off as a martyr or being seen as a person that really stands for immigrant rights and thinks that that's enough of a platform for him to run on. Gavin Newsom has also been pushing the trans in women's sports, even though he kind of came around on that not too long ago, but a lot of people thought it was just a political play. I agree it was, but I was hoping that he could still use his influence to possibly do something. He's done nothing about it.
Nope.
Anyway, I'm not trying to get too far away from anything here, but what I am trying to say is that I don't think the Marines are at all betraying the American people when law enforcement has admitted that they felt overwhelmed before the Coast Guard was called in. And they were literally being mistreated. And that is what ends up getting all of these protests shut down, is that they keep ratcheting it up because they think that it's all covered by freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and the right to protest.
I fully support the military that supports the Constitution. The Constitution is what's important, not the idiot who's at the head of this administration.
Well, let me tell you, doing donuts in the intersection is not covered as part of your protest.
No.
Looting stores is not covered by your protest. Property damage not covered by your protest. Arson not covered by your protest.
Certainly not the chaotic scene that we had last night with 5 Waymo vehicles on fire, try to set a CHP vehicle on fire, and sporadic fires all over the place in downtown Los Angeles, spread out in different areas, which was, you know, very difficult. Okay, somebody just looked like a smoke bomb or something like that.
Putting hands on police officers, throwing things at police officers, not covered by your protest.
No.
None of this is your constitutional right. And
not a single thing that he just mentioned is covered by the First Amendment. Freedom of assembly. No. The Constitution does not protect acts of criminality, vandalism, assaulting police officers, assault full stop. It doesn't cover that shit. No. Again, this is what happens when you stop teaching civics in the schools and when you stop teaching American history and people get their information from TikTok and Twitter. Absolutely not.
Don't know who told you that it was, but I'm here to tell you that it most definitely is not. And that's what's getting people arrested. And that's what's getting them to consider certain things to be unlawful assembly.
This is an intersection that not so long ago was filled with protesters facing off with police. Then about an hour ago, police started to cuff people after repeated announcements asking them to go home, telling them to leave this area. They started to cuff people. I know we have some video of them taking people into custody and then loading them up on these big white LAPD buses that we see that they use when they start to make mass arrests. And so we saw that about an hour ago. They took away 2 full buses, maybe about 40 people who had been standing off with police for hours on different intersections throughout.
Wow, people actually getting arrested in Los Angeles. Isn't that amazing? Take it in. All right? Take it in. I honestly, you know, I mean, of all the things that have happened, and they're all equally horrible, all of them, the thing that never ceases to fucking amaze me, and maybe I'm not seeing it because the cameras aren't pointing in the right direction. That's possible. I haven't been in Los Angeles in over 20 years. And the one thing that I remember more than anything was the traffic. And if nothing else, let's say that you don't own a business in downtown LA. Let's say that you've been spared and your business isn't getting looted or destroyed. Your car hasn't been targeted by an arsonist or something like that. How is it that Angelenos can tolerate these street blockages and the traffic that is going to be made exponentially worse by this mess? And I know that in Los Angeles, people have gotten used to being extremely inconvenienced when they have to get from point A to point B, but this is insane. This is fucking insane. You bring Los Angeles to a grinding halt, and yeah, I get it. Los Angeles is a huge city. It's spread out over many, many miles. But I wonder about New Yorkers, too. I've seen people in Chicago complaining. I've seen residents of Oakland and San Francisco complain. But what is it with these other cities? Does nobody have anything to say about nobody getting arrested, nobody getting convicted? It's crazy.
Downtown Los Angeles
is because it keeps getting ratcheted up. And at a point when you have night 4 and everybody's done playing with you, you've already set, 5 Waymos on fire? That's a self-driving car for anyone that's not familiar. You tried to set CHP, California Highway Patrol, vehicle on fire, and at a point I saw where they were throwing rocks off the overpass onto LAPD cars.
Yep.
And at a point they hit one of the officers and knocked off his mask, his shield. I mean, how much of this do you think is supposed to be covered by your right to protest? Because none of that is covered by your right to protest.
No, it isn't.
And I would imagine what it is there are certain people, like I've said before, that are just bad apples and just looking for a place to take out their toxicity. And rather than the people around them correcting them and being like, okay, that's not the way we're going to make our point. That's not what we're going to do to make people sympathetic to us or want to allow us to stay, because that's what you're going to need to get anything accomplished in that way. There's always going to be a certain amount of public sentiment that's going to play into this. And right now, even though you might be doing good in California and possibly Oregon, Washington, I don't know though, because while you may be popular in Portland and Seattle, a lot of other people in Oregon and Washington don't really feel that pro-immigrant. And that's
but Portland and Seattle are outliers.
the other thing. I think there's a lot of liberal people lying to themselves and thinking that they have a lot more support than they do because their cities are like echo chambers. So
correct.
You don't have the support that you think you have. And then you add to it that you make yourselves look like criminals. Then you add to it the insult of waving flags from other countries.
Right.
Then you add to it that you're making it look like a post-apocalyptic world in the cities that you're having your demonstrations in. And altogether, people get like, yeah, no, we don't want that. That's not what we want at all. That's not at all what we're looking for or what we're trying to turn our neighborhoods into. And then, like I said, you insist on saying things like California is Mexico. Well, it's not Mexico.
No, it isn't.
And
no,
you know
it
how I
isn't.
can tell you for sure that California is not Mexico? Because if it were Mexico, nobody would be trying to sneak into it and nobody would be fighting to stay. But anyway, what I was getting at is night 4 is a good example, and it shows you how effective this strategy that President Trump and the law enforcement in California and the National Guard altogether, I would say the strategy that they've come up with is really working out. Because if you notice, tonight was a smaller crowd than any other night. It also is a Monday, so that makes sense. But it was a smaller crowd than any other night. And in a small crowd, it's easier to pick out the bad actors. And it's easier to tell who's really down for it and who's kind of just hanging out, trying to take some selfies and wants to feel like they're a part of something. Because that's the other thing people forget, is that when there are events like this, there are a fair amount of influencers that really don't care that much about the cause. Some do.
Yeah, Hassan Piker was down there because of course he was.
But some really don't. They're just there for a photo op. They're just there to get some good live footage, to stream some stuff for their home audience and hopefully build up their following. And then you also have the people that just want to feel a part of something. They're not necessarily influencers, but they just want to feel like they're part of the modern civil rights movement.
Right.
Even though this isn't that kind of situation.
No, not at all.
Because no matter what you do, there just do have to be immigration laws. And even further than just immigration laws, there do have to be laws. And that's what a lot of people forget, is a lot of the stuff that you're trying to get away with during your peaceful protest wouldn't be legal if this were just a regular day. And the fact that it's a protest doesn't mean it's just a free-for-all and now you can set cars on fire.
Right.
And now nobody's property matters except for your point that you're trying to make. And what you also forget is while you're doing this with the police and the police have to shut these streets down, all of those businesses that are your fellow citizens, if you're a United States citizen, or the people that you consider supposedly your neighbors and your allies, if you're an illegal immigrant, all those businesses are having to be shut down.
That's
None
right.
of them are able to make money. None of them are able to do what they have to do. And they're all scared that they're going to get looted or that something's going to happen. Like they tried to loot Chevron. Tonight on one of the videos, there was a guy that hit a window with the skateboard. Luckily, the window didn't break, but this guy tried to break a window with the skateboard. And this is the kind of stuff that people are doing. So tonight was night 4, like I said, and the police just set up their barrier because there was past a certain point that people weren't allowed to cross. And then in one area in particular, they had said that it was unlawful assembly in that area. That area just was not allowed. And people decided they weren't going to leave. So that's why people started getting arrested in that area.
At last.
So then they set up the area like, okay, not past this, but obviously it's your right to protest. Go ahead and protest. And so what happened was, at a point, the protesters start moving closer to the line.
Of course.
Like I said, night 4 on Monday, nobody's in the mood for it. So it's time to start sending out some pepper bombs, possibly some tear gas, whatever it takes to get this crowd back. So then the crowd backs up, and then here comes some guy, fireworks, big fireworks, launching them out of his truck.
That is being fired from someone's pickup truck. I can see them. They're shooting it. They have like a launcher. They have a launcher. Do you see that, Anna?
Oh, there we go.
This is so insane. Yeah,
Well, you know what?
Then that turns out not to be good enough. Like I said, it always gets ratcheted up. Turns out not to be good enough. Then they start aiming fireworks at the police officers.
They're firing things into the police line. Yeah, they were the fireworks. Yeah, I mean, now this is just going to get ugly. You know, the police are not going to allow that to continue.
Which, not to mention, fireworks are illegal in LA. So
That's right.
that alone can get you arrested, really. The police, in my opinion, were being very generous in almost everything. So I'm not really sure why there's this hate towards the police, because I really feel like law enforcement, if you have a problem with ICE, and you have a problem with ICE, which I still don't agree with, but I would say that the police have been forgiving enough that they shouldn't really be getting the hate that they're getting, and nobody from that movement especially should be in any way threatening their well-being or their lives, because really they've been as forgiving as they could possibly be.
And they were really...
Yeah, the LAPD has been living in absolute fear. They are so heavily watched since the Rodney King days. I mean, I've been watching the police, and to be honest with you, I've been very unimpressed with what I've seen. Now, I understand, believe me, I understand that being a police officer in the middle of a riot is extremely touchy, okay? It's tough. It's tough. At the same time, though, what the fuck are you doing down there if not to maintain order? If you see people who are smashing and grabbing downtown and robbing the T-Mobile store, the Apple store, whatever store, yeah, a crime is being committed. Now, I do not envy the job of the police chief. I think that that would be a sucky job to have, and to have to deal with this horse shit. But I've been wondering about these big city police departments and what exactly they are tasked with doing during civil unrest. I just don't get it.
Holding their line, exercising a lot of restraint, and then you saw from the crowd projectiles, fireworks. At one point, there were little fires started in that police line, and that's when they really started responding.
And the reason that I say that they did such a good job with this is because the way they had it set up and the way they had things closed off, it made it so the crowd could only kind of get so big in that area anyway. And then each time the crowd would mess up, and then they would decide to maybe charge them a little bit and hit them with some tear gas or pepper spray or whatever it was they were sending out their way, that would cause the crowd to splinter, and then they couldn't be a crowd anymore. And so it just kept breaking it up. And yeah, when what's going on is exactly what I'm describing, then the police do have the right to break it up, because no matter what you do, some of these protesters are going to turn it into a lawless situation.
Exactly.
And then there was a point a few minutes later where a car decided to charge at the line. And that was right after some people decided to push dumpsters at the police. Like they were going to turn it into a barricade to keep the police back. And everything I'm saying is the examples of this ratcheting up and ratcheting it up, and the protesters not being okay with the fact that they're all right to protest, but it's just not going to be the scene that you want it to be. Because the truth is, if it doesn't turn into that kind of spectacle, you have your protest and nobody cares. Because as a person that lived in LA for 14 years, let me tell you that on the surface, those people may care about you as immigrants or illegal immigrants, but I'll tell you how much they really care about you. I was around when people were really talking about the evils of gentrification.
Right.
You know, when they take over a lot of times a really inexpensive ethnic neighborhood. A lot
Right.
of times Latino is what it is in LA. Like Echo Park, Silver Lake, Los Feliz, or Los Feliz is the way they say it. But they take over those areas, and then they put cool coffee houses in them. And before you know it, the rent goes up, and the people that originally lived there, the Latinos, get pushed out of those neighborhoods. Well, I was there when that was like supposedly the most evil thing to young white hipsters, right? It
Sure.
was so evil to them, gentrification. They would write blogs about it. They would do think pieces. They would talk about it incessantly. But those same people lived in those same neighborhoods and were the actual problem. So
that is exactly what happened in DC. Exactly the same thing. When property values go up and rent goes up and housing prices go up, then all of these nudniks who are out there bitching about gentrification, they have no choice but to move into those neighborhoods. So they become the very people that they're protesting against, and they have absolutely no sense. They have no self-awareness whatsoever. So it's best to just ignore all of them. They're a joke.
So I guess my point is, don't lie to yourselves and think that these people, because they'll show up and be part of a spectacle and take some selfies, really, really care about you like that.
They
because in
don't.
the end, you're going to be left holding the bag.
Yep.
You're going to get deported. And the ones that are crazy enough to be down for it are going to eventually get in enough trouble that they're going to lose their right to vote anyway.
Or they'll just up stakes and go to the next city where there is mayhem breaking out. You know, they will go to Portland, they'll go to Seattle, they'll go to New York, they'll go wherever. And they'll go from city to city, stirring the pot and making trouble, but they really aren't invested. They don't give a shit. Okay? Some of them are in it for the money. Some of them are in it for the internet fame. Some of them are in it because they're psychotic and they just want to create as much trouble as possible. That would be the Antifa branch. Some of them are doing it because they have certain political views about America and capitalism and colonialism and all that shit, and they don't understand what they're saying. They have no clue. Some of them are just young and they're looking for something to do. And some of them are hardened criminals. They're gang members who are out there to create problems and to steal as much as they possibly can. And they melt into these crowds, whether it's the Palestinian protests or now these protests in Los Angeles and in other cities. I mean, I remember seeing during one of the campus protests, I think it was UCLA, that there were a fair number of gang members who had infiltrated the Free Palestine movement, but everybody had their face covered, you know, and the kids that are on the UCLA campus, they're so naive. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know anything. They've never been exposed to danger or truly dangerous people or really dangerous criminals. Maybe they even romanticize them. But we cannot ignore that that is an actual faction. All right, an actual faction of these protesters, these rioters. Let's call them what they actually are.
So they're not going to be able to help you out. And all of the people that are truly agitating and all of the people that are truly committing crimes, like I said, spray painting things, setting things on fire, vandalizing things, trying to hurt the police, property damage, all of the things that they're doing wrong are hurting your cause more than you realize. So if you think the people that are doing that are really on your side, even if they are fellow immigrants or fellow illegal immigrants, you are out of your mind.
Yep.
Anyway, that's where I'm at on it, and that's as real as I can be. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. If you want to see my Last Ice video, which I won't get into it right now, click the video on your screen. Other than that, as always, thank you for watching.
Okay, so here's my thought on this. So I have been watching way too much footage out of LA for the past several days. And the thing that bothers me more than anything else, I mean, I've seen mayhem in Los Angeles before. This is not new. I've seen it in DC. I've seen it in New York. I've seen it in different cities all over the United States. So this is nothing new. It's nothing new. And the solution to it is basically a replay of 92. So we've been here before. The thing that bothers me and the thing that sets these riots apart from what happened in 92 in Los Angeles. In 1992, there was not a single public official who was deluded enough to get in front of a bank of microphones and claim that what we were seeing with our own eyes was not actually happening. Now, whether you agreed or disagreed with the Rodney King verdict for the police of the police officers, hey, Kimmers. One thing that was undeniable was that the violence in Los Angeles was out of control. That much we could agree on. We could look at the footage and say, holy shit, this is getting crazy. You know? And then when Reginald Denny was dragged out of his truck and hit over the head with a cinder block, and I don't know how many of you watched that trial, but if you saw the side of Reginald Denny's head and the damage that blow to the head did to him, it's a miracle that it didn't kill him. A miracle. He had a dent on the side of his head. It was incredible, and we saw it happen. We saw it play out on live television. The man was dragged out of his truck. He ended up at the corner of Florence and Normandy in South Central, and two guys came up and they attacked him. They threw a cinder block at him. They nearly killed him. And then they ended up going on trial and going to prison. Okay, fine. Nobody denied that was absolutely grotesque, and that the violence in Los Angeles had gotten completely out of control. Completely out of control. So now what I'm seeing is that you have politicians who have the gall to stand in front of, yes, a bank of microphones. Thank you, Kimmers, for becoming a member. And try to convince us that what we are seeing with our own eyes is not actually happening, or they're trying to redefine it. It's the gaslighting that is off the chain for me. And I wonder about these politicians. Do they not know that Twitter and TikTok and all these other social media platforms, YouTube and Rumble and so on, are full of videotape of images of what is actually happening on the ground? Why lie about it? Why give a statement where you claim that actually, well, the protests are mostly peaceful? How many times have we heard that? And the protests are not mostly peaceful. They're not. So that's the thing that's bothering me more than anything. That despite the fact that we are now living in a time period where everything that happens, every live event that happens is covered extensively from multiple camera angles on multiple different social media platforms by multiple different people, we have people who are going out there to convince us that what we are seeing is not what is happening. And I find that incredibly disconcerting and very Orwellian. And so every now and then I just have to cut back on my diet of, current events videos, because I just cannot believe what I am hearing and what I am seeing and how they are so at odds with one another. But anyway, thank you so much, you guys, for being here. I appreciate you. Welcome to the new members. And I will be seeing you guys the next time. Again, thank you for being here. See you later.